fantasy, caught in a landslide, no escape from reality.
Alright, so there's been a lot to talk about this week. There's been a lot of comics, there's been a lot of drama, and I think this particular comic may have just fell down, the rabbit hole, so to speak, and maybe people just looked over it. I really liked it. This is Tales of Suspense featuring Hawkeye and Winter Soldier, and I don't know, it's pretty decent. Now, Matt Rosenberg is that guy now. He's been hired at Marvel, and he's pretty much writing everything all of a sudden. They just get him in there and they say, guess what, this is your year. And so he's doing this little short 5-part Tales of Suspense. They're trying to bring back, that's part of Legacy, they're trying to bring back those things. They're using the original numbering for Tales of Suspense, and this one has Hawkeye and Winter Soldier in it. I like the cover art. It looks pretty good. The inside art takes some getting used to because it's obviously digital coloring, and at first I didn't really like it, but let's get into this a little bit. So basically, if you've been reading Secret Empire, I know nobody has, then you know that Black Widow died. It happened. It's sad. Not really sad because nobody really read the comic book, but whatever. But so now you've got all this stuff that's happening in the wake of that. You've got Clint, which was a close friend of Nat, which is Black Widow, and also Winter Soldier was as well. People forget about that because he's not very sociable, but they were in the same programs. So we start out here, and Clint Barton is very disheveled. He's at a funeral, and you just assume the funeral is Black Widow. I mean, why wouldn't you assume that? That's the first time we've seen him doing something like this. So he goes up there and he's very nonchalant about it, and he just looks at the dude and he says, "Dang, he looks messed up." And other guy's like, "Excuse me?" And he says, "Oh, I'm sorry." And he says, "How did you know David?" And he says, "Oh, yachts. We own yachts together. That sort of sacred shared yacht thing. He's just making stuff up." So it quickly backfires on him. They're going back and forth. He says, "Hey, my name's Clint." He's like, "Clint what?" He says, "Clint Yacht." And he's like, "Oh, it's not the way you're thinking. It needs to be spelled." And it just gets really, really cringy really fast. So he goes for the Hail Mary, and he just whispers in the guy's ear, "Hail Hydra." And the guy's like, "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about." And so they attack him. He pretty much grabs a hold of one of the bodyguards, and he says, I know you guys are all Hydra, and somebody's been offing you guys. They've been killing you left and right, and I'm here to find out who that is. And he says, "I think we should talk." So they all pull their guns on him. He's like, "Oh, okay, so we're not talking." So then this quickly gets out of hand. He's fighting the guys back and forth. He's not used to this kind of stuff. He's used to fighting, but he's not used to quite, being suave like a spy. He's more of a blunt object. He's more of a standing back, out of the way kind of deal. He fires from a distance. He's kind of like a sniper. So he gets in a fight with these guys, and it starts a fire in the freaking funeral home. He accidentally punches the funeral home owner, thinking it's a fighter. The whole place burns down. It's just nuts. But so he's sitting out there with a poor old man in the funeral home. It's burnt down. And he says, "It was the funeral. I run a funeral home." He says, "Okay, so I burned down your business. I told you Tony Stark is going to buy you a brand new." He goes, "But I lived here too." And he says, "Come on, don't you think I feel bad enough already?" It's very much like Clint. And so the cops come up. They want to know what's going on. He says, "Look, I'm an Avengers. My name's Hawkeye, and his middle name's Francis, guys. Francis. Somebody double check that." And so they run off. They pretty much had it. They don't want anything to do with Avengers. He goes, "Wait a second, I need to ask you a question. You ever been to Chernaya, however you say that?" Because that's where the Hydra guys was telling him to go. So we get a couple cool shots here. I like him in the jacket with the Hawkeye t-shirt. It's kind of cool. But he's sneaking around, he's trying to find his way, and then he notices that there's two guys that's been following him, and they're not really trying to hide it at all. And so he loses them in a crowd because just like every third world country, guess what? The government's ransacked, the city is falling apart, and they're rioting because everybody thinks that all these other countries riot, and they probably do. But so he's got to get to the embassy. Convenient for him, the riot is headed towards the embassy, so he just walks right up to the front, and then all of a sudden there's a bomb. He uses that as a distraction to attack one of the guards and then say, hey, arrest me, because he thinks it's going to get him inside. Well, as they're arresting him and zip tying him, he notices somebody run across the rooftops with long hair, and he says, Nat. So then that's his chance. He escapes the guards, gets away, climbs the wall, and jumps into the guy from earlier's office, the guy from the funeral. And he says, oh good, Anton, you're not dead yet. He says, she's not been here. So then he is pretty much going to knock him out with an arrow, but then he says, please, I'm sorry, I admit it, I was in Hydra High Command, but he says, oh, calm down, my little fascist friend, everything's fine. So he turns the lights off so no one can see him, and then starts talking to him. He says, I came here to save you, sort of. And then right as they're talking, he knows something's wrong. So he shoves the guy behind the desk, bullets start spraying into the room. He uses that as an opportunity to shoot 2 arrows at the dude, hits him with one, plugs the gun with the other. And then the guy attacks. And we see that it's actually the Winter Soldier, and he says, this is the new low for you, Barton. And he's like, Bucky. And so then as they're fighting, he says, oh, and this is also Nat's ex-girlfriend, or ex-boyfriend. I know. And he says, funny thing for an assassin to say, Barnes. And he says, I didn't take you for someone who'd be okay with killing an unarmed man. He said, that's why I came here to stop you. And he says, I came here to stop you. He says, you came here to stop me from stopping you? He says, what are you talking about? Well, what are you talking about? So then they come to figure out that they're both here to find out what this guy knows. And he says, Natasha Romanoff's alive, isn't she? And he says, the Black Widow's alive? And he says, Barton, you don't know that. And he says, no, but I think it. And he says, you hope. That's not the same thing. He says, I followed every lead I could, and it led me here, same as you. And he says, you've seen the same patterns, notice the same style to all these killings. It's her. Tell me I'm wrong. And so they look, Bucky, this is not his first rodeo. He knows Nat's techniques because they're the same as his. And he notices that her brand is on the side of the desk, which is supposed to take credit for this killing. And he says, this one is Natasha. And he says, so she was here? Wait a second. And so as they're talking, the guy is pulling for his gun, which has been laced with Semtex and causes the whole place to explode. And then at that point, it's to be continued. And I gotta say, I blew through this comic. I mean, it was so fun, it was so exciting. There's lots of stakes, there's lots of things happening. The characters are not wimps. I mean, this is awesome. So, and I mean, Clint didn't really even do that much. He fought a couple of guys, he traveled to another country, he had a quick little fight with Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier looked awesome in his costume. I mean, this is the way you write comics here. Both of them have distinct personalities. I'm excited to see what else is going to go with this. And it kind of snuck up on me because I read a little bit about it, and I thought, hey, I'll read that whenever it comes out. And then I didn't hear anything else. And then all of a sudden it's out. And it's under Tales of Suspense, so it threw me off. I wasn't looking for it. But I got to say, this is pretty good. Matthew Rosenberg is not the best writer, but I think this is within his wheelhouse. Simple action story, not too much craziness. There's a beginning, middle, and end. There's a conflict. There's an antagonist. There's a protagonist. I mean, it's pretty good. And then the protagonist ends up being his friend. So then now they're teaming up to find out what's really going on. And there's mystery because is Black Widow still alive? We don't know. So that gives us something to want to know. They're not just perfect characters sitting there in an adventure, and at the end of the day, like, ha ha ha, nothing has any merit, nothing has any suspense or anything, nothing matters because they're just going to come out perfect at the end of the day. This is actually a fun little story. So I'm really excited to see what else is going to happen. I definitely want to check it out. And I'm going to check out who the editors was real quick. The editor is Tom Brevoort, and the executive editor, I love how they had this new thing, executive editor, Lana Smith, and then Carlos Lao is the regular editor. So I'm definitely excited. It's cool. This is Barton. This is not an idiot. He messes things up, but it's not like he's just a bumbling fool. But alright guys, I'll talk to you later. I hope you give this book a look. The art is so-so at Marvel. I mean, Marvel's dipped really low here lately, but this is okay. It just takes some getting used to. But alright guys, have a great day. Underground Geek out.